Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Fake, 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 fake.
Fake, 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 fake.
So I started this video when I was talking about Trump and the stupidity behind 2025 and how they were, messing up the whole Joe Biden Dementiagate thing that was happening. And, I was making that video this morning. Today's Saturday, July 13th, but a big event happened. Richard Simmons died. And another big event happened. Alec Baldwin was acquitted. And the third biggest thing that happened, the third story, Donald Trump got his ear pierced. I butchered that joke. Donald Trump got his ear pierced. So this is what happened, how I found out about it. My wife said there was I don't know how we heard that there was a shooting at the Trump rally. I didn't pay attention to it. Then my wife said Trump was okay, and then we went for a walk. And I came back and I looked at my YouTube feed, and there was all these videos about Trump being shot and his ear was bleeding, and there was pictures of it, and this was much different than I originally thought, which was that there was some sort of shooting that didn't involve Trump. And I looked at it and I thought it was fake. I mean, my intuition was like, well, this is fake. And I don't know, if I become jaded, and it just seemed like a bad B movie, and I'll get into that in a bit. I'm not saying it is fake, and I'll go through some of the footage, in a bit. First, I should say, this is a pre-introduction, and I always have to say this now, that YouTube is, shadow banning my channel for the most part, has been doing that for years. And I had a conversation with these YouTube bots, and they sort of, all of a sudden, were recommending my channel more, and I was getting people to show back up, that hadn't seen my videos in years. But to make a long story short, by liking videos, by clicking on the notification button, by staying subscribed, even if you get unsubscribed, let YouTube know that you're interested in my channel and seeing future content, leave comments, whatever you can do in terms of, the bots and the algorithms. But anyways, let's get into it here. So for me, it was when I saw Trump's bloody ear, right? And again, I'm not trying to make a case for it being fake. I'm just saying this is how I reacted. Like, it just seemed staged and kind of scripted and, unreal. And it could be something that's real that appears unreal, like surreal. But when I saw Trump's bloody ear, I'm like, if he didn't have a bloody ear, it would be more believable for me. And, again, it was a more intuitional thing. But let me reverse engineer this. So let's talk about what's going to happen. Now, Trump the tides were turning a little bit. I don't know if Biden is going to end up being the nominee. I got more news about that. The donors are, are pulling some of their money back until Biden withdraws, like $90 million. I will get into that in a bit. And there's other stuff I want to show you about 2025. And 2025 was starting to take traction in mainstream media that had made Biden's Dementiagate, his Parkinson's, the main story. We're now backing off of that and starting to cover Trump again, right? And so, it was going in a direction that wasn't favorable for Trump, and going into the Republican National Convention and, just riding the wave of all the attention being on Biden. And now Trump has a bloody ear, attempted, so-called attempted murder, assassination, and his crowd and base are really fired up. So to start off with, I should say this. There's a chance that this video will not be monetized. You guys will either see ads or you won't. If it's not monetized, it's because of graphic imagery. I'm not sure how YouTube's going to play this thing. Going into the election, maybe they're a little bit more lenient, but things with blood in it, YouTube usually demonetized, just so you know, so people can support this video if they feel up to it. But anyways, the first part to understand is victim consciousness. Biden was trying to use victim consciousness, that he was being forced out of the election because of his age, and because these insiders, these Hollywood Democratic elite, people love to talk about the elite now because of it being made popular by the truth community. But everyone wants to be a victim, right? Israel wants to be a victim. Like, it's, I mean, all these different countries are always becoming victims. Countries themselves, people themselves, everyone likes to talk about how they've been victimized and be the underdog. And so victim consciousness is very powerful. And it plays really well in America and other places. And so being a victim and being wronged and being self-righteous and being sanctimonious. There was one Republican who was talking, and unfortunately, I didn't tape this in because I really wish I could have got this, because there's a point where Wolf Blitzer said, I'm really, concerned about Donald Trump and being shot in the face, or whatever happened to his face. He said something like that. It's hilarious. But they had a Republican commentator, and he said all the hate and vitriol that was going against Trump caused the problem. And Wolf Blitzer says, yeah, that's true, but also Trump is very vitriolic about Biden and calling him the worst president in history. And they're both saying that if the other guy's elected, it's the end of America as we now know it, right? Fighting for the soul of the nation and this stuff. And that, Trump is a dictator. Biden came out and said, oh, I'm grateful that Trump's okay, and he's pulling his ads and saying there's no need for this. But if Trump is really Hitler, if Trump is really a demagogue, a dictator in waiting, I mean, think about all the people that say, if they were in a time machine, they go back and kill Hitler. Like, that's something people say all the time, and they're comparing Trump to Hitler. And so if what you're saying about Trump is true, or if Trump is saying about Biden is true, then why would it be a bad thing? Why would this be, if this guy is going to cause millions upon millions of people to die in some sort of billions of people in world wars or whatever it is that's going to happen, these guys are going to destroy the world, then why aren't you rooting for this, right? If you literally believe that, and I'm not advocating violence, I'm just talking about them. I'm talking about them and their words, both the Democrats and the liberals. The people who are really into this believe the other side is evil. And so therefore, when they see something like this happens, all the Trump haters, why would they be anything but happy, right? Because they think Trump's going to destroy America or the world, right? So this is, that's really weird. But getting back into this thing with victim consciousness, everyone wants to be a victim, right? Trump is kind of a puss, right? He was attacked before, and he really kind of looked rattled, and something like really happened his first time he ran against, I think it was Hillary. You guys can see the video somewhere, it's out there. So there was these shots that were fired, and the crowd reacted, and I'll go through that. I'll do that tomorrow morning when I start covering this. I'll just do a little brief thing about that. But he goes down to the ground, and he comes up, and he's bleeding from his ear, and he starts pumping his fist to the crowd and yelling, fight, fight, fight. And the crowd is on their feet yelling, fight, and pumping their fists. And there's a guy and a girl. I don't know if you guys will see this, but I was watching on CNN. And the old guy's giving the finger to the camera, and he's saying, F you, F you. And this girl is like, might be his daughter, is yelling, USA, USA, USA. And then she gives the finger to the media. And like, there all this vitriol and anger towards the media. And now Trump has been victimized. And these people feel like he's been attacked. They've been attacked through Trump. Trump is their savior. Trump is their messiah. These cult of Trumpers who feel like he's been targeted and victimized by the government and wrongly charged with, these crimes that he didn't commit, and he was robbed of his election, and he just wants to make America great again. And now he's been, this targeted for assassination, and he's going to get up on the podium in a couple of days after, he wins the nomination, and he's going to come out with a bandage on his ear, and he's going to be a wounded soldier coming out, telling his people to fight. And who knows where that'll lead, right? More fake violence, more whatever it is, these psychological type of events, these stage things or whatever, to create more division in America, or maybe real things happen. I don't know. Either way, just think about the way this is going to play out, right? Where these people feel victimized, these people feel like the left is trying to destroy the world, the 2025 agenda that's being out there, and all the things that they feel their way is being attacked. They feel that they're being targeted as MAGA voters, Trumpers, like the media and everybody else, and this is, And so this is how this thing's going to play out. And it's, 2 days the convention starts. 3-4 days, Trump's going to come out and give a speech, and this is going to be televised nationally. He's going to come out like Rocky fucking Balboa and, all that bullshit. Like all these things, And it's way better because he'd been bloodied. Like if he just was shot at and a few other people died, it's one thing. But the fact that he took a bullet, to the ear, like just grazed his ear, it's a miracle. I mean, it's a miracle shot because 3 shots were fired. I assume the guy had a scope on his rifle. And, there's another story here where they interviewed this guy who said he and his, friends were outside the venue and they saw a guy crawling on the roof with a rifle and they're yelling at the cops. And this guy got access to Trump's. I mean, he had, if he shot him in the ear, he could have shot him in the head. They were saying if it was 1 inch either way or 1 inch towards the, his head area, he'd be dead right now, right? And then it would be more believable, But the fact that it just grazed his ear, but he's bleeding, he's getting up, and he's all disheveled. And again, it looks kind of real, some parts of it, some of it doesn't look as real. But either way, the outcome's the same. It's more division, more hatred, more, like call to arms, like this is like an act of war. And this is where a civil war breaks out, right? You're attacking their guy, and these people have guns, these people have, wherever they are, right? These right-wing Trumpers. So if you look at the outcome of this thing and where this is going to lead, and all of it, and we're going to see how it plays out, and the story that's going to come out about the shooter who was killed, and all these other things. And so, that was my initial reaction to the thing, and it brings victim consciousness to the right, and they feel, like they're always talked about how they're the violent ones and the evil ones, but now some lefty freak has gone after their guy, and they're all up in arms and these things. And things ain't getting better from this, right? Like this is just, it's like setting a bunch of things in motion in some B-rate apocalyptic movie. It just looked like such a B movie out there. Some like, just all the people in the audience. There's a guy wearing a brick wall as a coat. Like he has a jacket, like a suit jacket. And it's bricks, like he's in the front row, these weirdos, and, all these Trumpers and how angry they were and how fired up they were and, all these things. Okay, so I'm fading out here. I'm going to look to see what I have in terms of the footage I want to show you guys and just, talk about that a little bit here. I'll do that tomorrow, and then I'll get this video up. I got a couple videos that are older videos I want to release. We'll see how long, this thing's going to go on for what now, and the convention. There's a lot of big things happen. Very chaotic, one thing after another. But let's get into the footage here first. Okay, so look at his shoes. He's wearing a suit with like slippers.
Thanks for coming.
Because he can't walk anymore, right? Those are his Parkinson shoes. Here.
Folks, I've been thoroughly briefed by all the agencies in the federal government as to the situation, based on what we know now. I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with
Donald now? He's all of a sudden Donald your pal?
Apparently he's doing well. I plan on talking to them shortly, I hope, when I get back to the...
you guys are friends now? You got shot in the ear? He's got a piercing now? You guys are cool? Okay, so I'm editing. Today's Sunday, July 14th. I shot this last night, 13th. I was a little bit tired, but, one of the things Biden gets out of this was, he suspended his campaign, so he doesn't have to do live events anymore. Who knows, he's pulled all of his ads, all these things, right? And so, this narrative of Biden being senile or being, too old to be in the race is now no longer. They're talking about Trump again. Now they're going into the Republican convention. Trump was assassinated, and that's all they're going to talk about. Biden is just going to withdraw and go back to the, they might keep him. Who knows what's going to happen here? But we know that the narrative has been changed. The narrative was, they did this with Biden in 2019. And what happened was they had this problem where he was a groper. And that when he'd swear these senators in and he would maul their wives and their kids and their, smell their heads and do this weird stuff, frottage, touching them, in some way. And, it's been well documented. And it was a problem that he did over where he was very handsy and, all these things. And they knew it was going to be an issue. And so they took an inside person, a woman who was a political person to Nevada, and where she complained about Biden smelling her hair. And they ran it as the news story that was controlled. And Biden addressed it. And then he stopped doing it, right? But, they dealt with it like it was something that they all knew before, because CNN did a report in 2015 when they were going for Hillary, when they were supporting Hillary. And they showed him doing it. And David Letterman and Jon Stewart making jokes about it when he was vice president, how handsy he was and how gropey and how weird it was. But they dealt with it like they just took it on as a real story. And he kind of sort of semi-apologized in a way by saying he's just trying to be supportive to people. And, people have because of his tragic life. And he was just giving them encouragement. And, that's not what was happening. And so, they're doing that now with his senility. And, they put it out there. They seem to want to get rid of him, CNN and all these places. But now that's on the back burner because he's not being covered. He's not being scrutinized. All this stuff about Trump and the assassination, which is going to dominate the news cycle for the next period of time, right? And so Biden gets a second chance here. They may focus back on him when it comes to the convention. We'll see how it plays out, right? But right now, this is Trump's time, right? And this is going to be about Trump and someone just tried to kill Trump, right?
Telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick.
What are you talking about? We're the most violent country. Our number one expenditure is the military-industrial complex. Our military is our number one priority. And, we have violence in our movies, violence in every aspect of our lives. Football is our number one sport, a collision game. We're violent people. And you're saying that Donald Trump is a potential dictator. He's a meteor. If a meteor was heading to Earth and we blew it up, you wouldn't be happy? Of course you would be. So if Donald Trump is the guy you're saying he is, then this, the only thing that should bother you is that it missed, right? In terms of him, not me. To me, this is just a show, and I want to make that distinction. It's hard for me to believe things because everything I see seems to be just part of a show, and maybe it's real, maybe it's not. In terms of, I don't know what's real or what's not in terms of, the whole idea of this world being Maya or illusion, a simulation. But in terms of this whole thing, it just seems unreal or surreal. But his position here is wrong.
It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state.
Okay, so again, that's just, it's silly. It's silly he said this. I'll maybe revisit this in a couple days. I'll watch the rest of it. So I'm back in real time. I'm editing here. And Obama and Clinton both came out and said the exact same words, there's no place for violence. Now, Clinton was involved in the Bosnia debacle where people were human trafficked and, it was a wag the dog type of situation from the movie. Wag the dog, like a fake war, to fight a scandal, like that kind of thing. But Obama was involved with a lot more, droning kids and all this stuff and continuing those wars in Afghanistan and all that stuff with Syria. When in Iraq where a million civilians were killed for a military-industrial complex, war that had nothing to do with anything, America being victimized in, 2001. And for them to come out and say there's no place for violence, right? They're all saying the exact same thing. But violence is a big part of the American experience, and America's doing violence all over the world, right? Especially right now, contributing to the Israeli situation where there's 20,000 dead kids or whatever it is, right? And so, it's just silly. The whole thing, it's just so performative. So this guy's named Adam Calhoun, and he is a redneck rapper who I believe is a Trump supporter. This came up on my feed.
Guys, they just shot Trump. This is not joke. This is not a funny video. They just shot Trump. Watch this.
So, who's they? Do you think Biden did this? Do you think the government? You think the people who control the system are so scared of Trump? He's their biggest asset. The Democrats have nothing without Trump. All their media, all their, their politics is based in anti-Trump. Everything's about Trump. They're not trying to shoot him. If the military did this, he'd be dead. If a military sniper got a clean shot at Trump from some building, he'd be dead. Like if this was done by the CIA or some agency, they're not scared of Trump. Trump's not going to save the world. There's no they, right? I don't know what this is. If it's real, it's some, they'll tell us who this is tomorrow or the next day, and we'll, take a look at that maybe. But, the story's going to come out, the official story. But there's no they, right? This isn't they. They don't want Trump dead. It's silly. Like Biden certainly doesn't. If Trump is dead, Biden has no reason. His whole reason is to defeat Trump. That's what he's saying. The only reason he's staying in the race is that he's got to finish what he started, and there's no enemy to justify his old ass being president again. So again, I'm editing here before I get into the coverage of the event. But they now have the shooter. So I just was talking about that, and you just heard that from last night. And the guy's name is Thomas Matthews Cooks. He's a 20-year-old guy from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. And as of right now, they don't know what his motive was. They are not showing his social media, all these things. And they're going to come out with a profile. And the profile is going to further exacerbate either theories from the right wing or whatever it is, right? And they were talking about there being a team of people behind this guy. Something like this, unless this guy's ex-military, whatever, just some guy with, whatever the narrative they're going to create, they're going to create. It might be something to do with, gun control. It could be a number of, there's a narrative that's going to come out, right? The official story. And so, this is, again, there's going to be interpretations by the Trumpers. They're not going to agree with the official story, and they're going to have their, whatever it is. But, everything about this seems not right, just something off about it, Where we see an event unfold, and it's part of what I call the show, like everything's a part of the show, and it just, doesn't seem real. Like it's just surreal in some way, which I get into as we, let's go back to it here. So this is the event here.
Now, Evan, you got some new reporting about what the congressman just mentioned, where the shooter was located. Give us the information that you're getting.
That went toward.
So here, he's talking about Medicare, and there's these various people. Look at the people behind him. You're going to hear. I'm not going to play it because you've probably already seen it multiple times.
The former president and the stage there. Again.
But he's up here, and he looks like he got there's a bug on his ear. He grabs his ear, no blood here, right? Again, maybe it didn't start bleeding right away. Again, I'm not going to say this is, whatever it is, but these guys are interesting right here. They're, this woman here in the hat, all these people, they're all part of this historic event. This woman here, they have their mouths open. And so Trump's goes down. These people don't go down. They're whoa, and they can see him grab his ear. Maybe he's bleeding now. Secret Service have moved in. And they're just sitting there crouching, and they look like they're just, they handpick these people. They got, Carlos Santana's up there, and they're all just, and then why aren't they going down? The shots are being fired. Multiple shots are being fired. And then the Secret Service snipers take them out. These guys rush up here. And this is where, when I first saw this, I thought, yeah, this looks kind of staged. It kind of looks like it's a, it's a bad B movie, right? It just doesn't seem surreal. So I have a compilation somewhere. I have a video up, a privatized video about this. And I don't know if I have the compilation. It's saved somewhere. I have it. I don't know what it is. That I've put together. Other people have put together the compilation as well, earlier. And I did one more with Trump involved. And there was a time where Obama would get up on stage and would, be giving a speech. And there was one specific time where there was a girl behind him who was pregnant, and she passed out, and he held her up, and he took care of her and got her some water. And Clinton did this, and both Clintons, Hillary and Bill, did this same kind of act. It was like a carnival act. Rick Santorum did it, and Michelle Obama did it, and Donald Trump did it. So there's and more politicians. There's just those I'm remembering, right? And what they'd be doing is they'd be giving a speech, and someone in the audience would have a medical event, and they'd be like, "Oh, get them water, everyone," and the person would take control. And Trump was like one of the later ones to do it, and they would appear to be compassionate and being a leader and in a crisis, and give them some air and all these things, right? They would say things to make it look like they were in control of a medical emergency. And it was all staged. As you can tell, it's fake when you see them all together. And many of you have probably seen this, but I'll find the compilation maybe in the next video, if I can find it and put it in here. But, it's just something that Trump has been involved in, and, it's already something other politicians, mostly Democrats, had done. But it was a way of showing that you were, a compassionate, in-control person. But what I'm saying it here is it's staging. And so, it's like, again, I'm interjecting this, I'm editing here. But once you get involved in this kind of performative on-stage thing in front of the people that, they're there, then everything becomes, questionable about your, whatever you're doing, right? Now you're into stagecraft. Now your speeches are involved in, acting. Everything is, political theater. And so you have to say, all right, this is political theater, right? Because it's something that he's done before, and they all do it. They have to stage these events, and if they can, get something out of it by pulling something off, right? And the Secret Service is already compromised because they let a shooter get up on the roof, so they're involved. Like there's no way their shooter should be up there. We'll get into that later here. There's a guy down here wearing a brick jacket. You'll see. This depends when they show it. Various people here, like going through this. Maybe I'll go through this a little bit more over time. This guy right here has a brick jacket. He's going to stand up. This guy right here, like what the hell is this guy? Like there's a guy here that says that he is. I forget what the thing said. That he is an ultra MAGA. And then they are going to come in here. This is like they get the close up here. And they pop Trump up. Trump says, "Just let me get my shoes back on," right? And then he gets propped up. He looks a little bit rattled. This woman comes in here. She seems to be running things. And they give clear shots. Now they have the shooter. So I don't know what this is going on. This shooter is apparently up here. He's dead. But they have the shooter. Let's go back to this here. This other video. So they pop him up here. They get him up. He says, "Let me get my shoes on." And he looks a little bit rattled. They huddle around him. But there's time where his head was exposed. If there was a second shooter, this was some sort of joint operation. Then he starts raising his fist. Doesn't seem Trump-like. Like, Trump to me is, very kind of a puss. Like he just isn't that guy. But he's putting his arm up, his fist up, right? Then he starts swinging his fist and almost hits this woman in the head. And like that's how he punches. Like, like it's weird. And they get him off the stage and they get him into his car. He's heading to his car. I hope they show this part. No, I'm getting cut off here. So I'm editing here. I watched the thing on CNN Live, and I'm going to talk about this. I made a voiceover already. I'll probably put it at the end of this morning. But I was watching CNN Live, and I taped it on YouTube TV, and they disappeared it in my, there's a section where you go where the shows that you've taped that you can rewatch, and they disappeared. I couldn't find it. It wasn't in my recently watched either. And so that was weird. And then when I was searching on YouTube, I couldn't find the whole event from start to finish. Eventually I found it here on Forbes. And so I wanted to go through it and talk about everything, last night, what you're hearing, what I'm presenting here. And so But that was interesting as well because it wasn't there from start to finish. All right, so there's multiple times here. Let me find this one here. Forbes has a full cover. So they're walking through here. There's multiple times. I mean, I'll document it maybe more tomorrow. And, he's there's multiple times his head sticking up here. Like he's just, you can see his head, right? They allow him to stand up here and, do this cheer and pump the crowd up before getting him into the car. And if there's a second shooter, if this was some kind of, bigger event, right? It just mishandled. So this guy just starts giving the finger, right? He says, F you. I don't know, hopefully you see F you, F you, F you. Then his daughter or something's over here, and she starts screaming, USA, USA, USA. And then she starts giving the finger, and they're like all hostile to the F you. They're all turning on the press and the media. They're all saying this is them. And, who's them? Like who would do this when they need Trump so much, right? And so, again, I want to show you the angle tomorrow with the ear, like how this would have to happen. I mean, just take a look at your ear. And, he said the bullet went pierced the top part of his ear. And so it just missed his head. And he'd have to be facing the shooter, or the shooter would have to be directly behind him. Otherwise, it would go into his skull, right? And so here's we shot right here at the beginning. Forget him. Here, let's start here. All right, so there's his ear, right? So a bullet's going to have to whiz past his face in this angle, right? Not to hit him in the cheek or not to hit him in the head. If it's going this way, it's going to go into his head, right? So he has to be facing the shooter. The shooter has to be over here. The shooter's over here on some building. And so the shooter would have to be at the correct angle so it just grazed his ear unless it was a fragment that hit his ear. And we'll find out more tomorrow. But again, he's like he turned towards it. Just seems like, some kind of a miracle, right? That it didn't go into his head. I mean, it's a lot easier to hit that big dome than it is to hit the lobe of an ear. Again, I'm not saying this is proof, and I don't, it is what it is. And this woman with the glasses and just all these people in there, right? It's, just bizarre. Seeing all these handpicked people up there and their reaction just seems kind of surreal. But I do know what I said in the beginning, what the outcome is going to be. And it's just going to escalate. There's a guy with a brick jacket down there. This guy. Anyways, I'll cover this more tomorrow a little bit, and I'll talk about more tomorrow. Okay. So look at his shoes. He's wearing a suit with like slippers.
Thanks for coming.
Because he can't walk anymore, right? Those are his Parkinson's shoes. Here.
Folks, I've been thoroughly briefed by all the agencies in the federal government as to the situation, based on what we know now. I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with
Donald?
his
Donald now? He's all of a sudden Donald your pal? Okay, so I'm just waking up Sunday, July 14th. And I wanted to, I'm going to stick this in my video here somewhere. But, the few right-wing truthers that show up here now, like I don't get that many anymore. People who are Trumpers. And, if this idea that somehow they're after Trump, the powers that be, is a silly idea. It's a silly idea for a variety of reasons, right? But have you ever heard them talk about a person who believes in the left-right paradigm, that both sides are controlled? Have you ever seen anybody get any kind of news attention who talks about those ideas? Have you ever heard them repeat those ideas? Have you ever heard them say, people who are, real truthers, people who realize you can't just control one side? If there's a control, you have to control both sides. That that the Democrats and Republicans are controlled by a group of people on a higher level. That just makes sense, right? If you're talking about a system of control, there has to be a control of both the left and right. The two different parties, the two different points of view. Otherwise, it's not a controlled system. And then if you're going to say, well, there's a guy like Trump who could squeak through and change things, well, that's not true either. Like, then it's not a controlled system. You can't say that the people are controlling everything if a guy like Trump could get into power. And they could take Trump out anytime they want, right? But they haven't. Trump has been the most talked about person for the past, I don't know, like 8 years now, since 2015. He's been the most talked about person 2015 and 16. When Trump became a viable candidate, all they ever do is talk about Trump. They love Trump, right? They talk about Alex Jones. There was a time when Alex Jones believed that the left and the right, he believed in the left-right paradigm, right? That both sides were controlled. Like, he leaned a little bit to the right, but when they started to go full Trump and he started to go full MAGA and right wing, all of a sudden Alex Jones became someone they talked about in the news. But you never hear them talk about real truther shit, right? You just don't. They don't ever talk about real truther ideas. And they don't talk about real truthers. And when they're covering a story, they'll make it into a so-called conspiracy theory, but not a real one. Like, they won't get into a conspiracy theory that is, something more sophisticated. It's always some right-wing QB type of Trumper type of MAGA, truth conspiracy, right? Whatever. It's never like a more thoughtful one. It's never more, okay, this is, something that explains the whole system more, like in a systemic level, instead of just event by event. That's outside the binary narratives of Democrat, Republican, left, right. These very narrow bandwidth. So within that bandwidth, Trump's position is that they're out to get him because he's there to save you. The people who are Trumpers believe that the government and media are all out to get Trump. And yet all they ever do is talk about him. He's the center of attention. It has been the central figure in America for the past 9 years, politically and then in many other ways. Everything revolves around Trump, whether you love him or hate him. It revolves around him. He loves the attention as a, that's what he gets out of it. Trump's always been self-promoting and loves people to talk about him, right? They say, there's no bad publicity. And so Trump has benefited, his family has benefited financially and all other ways. And so, it looks like they're persecuting the guy, like he's, persona non grata, but he's, within reach of the White House again. And they just keep the guy around, right? And so if they wanted him dead, he'd be dead. If they wanted him in jail, he'd be in jail. There's all kinds of ways they could get rid of Trump. He's not scaring them. He's not on your side. He's a self-centered prick. And he's kind of a puss, right? He's not the kind of guy, he's not a physical tough guy, right? Like, he's the kind of guy that worries about being, hurt or whatever it is. Like, he's just one of those people, you can tell. He's probably never been in like a real fight or something like that. He's kind of a bully or whatever. He's a big guy, but he's not, he's not a physical person. He's not a person that, he's somebody who, he's a billionaire or like a, wannabe billionaire. And somebody who grew up in wealth and protected and things. And so him raising his fist in the air, there's a thing I was watching last night, and it was kind of interesting because I was watching on YouTube TV, and I hit record, and it didn't record it. Like, I can't find it in the, where they would have recorded events. Like, they're hiding stuff now, which is kind of weird. And so it was the last thing I was watching. It wasn't on recently watched. Like, I turned the TV on this morning, it wasn't there. They're not allowing you to see it. And it was CNN's live coverage that isn't on the internet. And there was a woman there, Pamela Brown, and she was talking about how, how could the Secret Service allow a guy to be on the roof? Well, they wouldn't, right? Like, why? This was something the Trumpers are saying. The Secret Service was in on it. But, they have a job to do. And, they're completely compromised when they allow a potential shooter on the roof that people saw was on the roof. Of course, Trump saw him because they wanted them to see him. They wanted it to be something that was, that would be the way to look at it, right? But the CNN was asking, these questions even. Like, how is this, this level of incompetence by the Secret Service, where there was there's a building with a clear view of the stage, and they allowed a guy to get up there with a rifle and be up there for a while with people screaming, "There's a guy up there," and the police were ignoring it, right? So why was that? For the Trumpers, they're like, "Oh my God, they were in on it." Well, Trump was in on it. It's just silly, to think that it's some kind of left-wing conspiracy against Trump. And no, because Trump's going to benefit from this. The miracle shot that just pierced his ear. And then Dana Bash came in and said, there was that moment where he's looking for his shoes because, there was this historic aspect of this. And she says one of Trump's, and again, I wanted to find these clips and show you them because it was CNN, kind of asking like weird questions about this. And she said that he was looking for his shoes, but then he realized this was going to be a historic moment. The guy's been on TV forever, and he knows how it's going to play. And one of his representatives was his publicity guys posted a picture of Trump with his hand in the rear and blood on his face and the American flag behind him, and said, "This is like Iwo Jima, right?" And she said, Trump has changed the narrative here of him sort of cowering on the ground and being whisked away, where his head was. The Secret Service allowed his head to be seen multiple times. And if anybody knows about scopes and these, the precision of these, these military trained, snipers, Trump, if there was a second shooter, which there probably would have been if there was any kind of a, real conspiracy here, and you just got to assume there's a second shooter, like an assassination attempt, that there's, you assume it, like, just there. Oh, we got the guy, and then Trump's pumping his fist, and they're walking him to the car, and his head shows, a bunch of times, this big, pumpkin head, and, and all this stuff, and he's pumping his fist, and she said that now this historic moment is going to be Trump raising his fist in the air when he's blood on his face. Of course, now going into the convention, right? It just looked like a fake B-movie type of situation, and CNN was even, like, they were like, because they're not in on it, and they're like, whatever it is, right? And so there's going to be this narrative out there. And the whole thing's silly, right? Because, it's everything to me looks like it's just a joke. It's a show. I don't believe any of it, right? Not that it's all fake. It's just like, the whole thing just plays out like, a bad B movie. Like the show that we watch now with the news events and, Biden's senility and his having Parkinson's and all these things that's going on. And it's just like silly. The whole thing is like, why don't they, why isn't anybody, doing what needs to be done? Why would you run a guy? Why would you run a guy in Biden that, has Parkinson's? Like he was clearly breaking down mentally at least. He wasn't there. He wasn't there in 2019. Why would you run him for president and then hide him away and think you could get away with it again? And then Trump just being Trump, right? I'm going to get into it. I started this video yesterday before the event that happened at 6/11, which is interesting. But anyways, I just want to put this narrative in there. So it's just silly, right? Like they don't talk about real truther stuff. They don't talk about real truther things because they don't want people to hear those interpretations of reality. And they certainly don't talk about real spirituality. That God is within you, the divinity within you, and the material world is an illusion, and these things, right? That this is all some sort of, on a very, a deeper level, this is some sort of illusionary world we live in, where we think the physical world is, the real world, and the etheric world is the fake one, but it's just the opposite. Our souls were created at the beginning of creation, and should exist, in most cases exist, till the end of creation. Very rare cases a soul is destroyed, right? And you have this, this long life as an etheric being. You don't even call it a life, existence as an etheric being. And then you have these short lives as a human, right? Multiple lives. And so, there's something going on here. It's like a video game we're in. It seems so real, but it's, an illusion. And it's not our true nature and who we are. We get, warped by our sensory, desires and, our egos and things that are created to be a part of this, reality, this, this fake reality. And so they never talk about stuff like that, right? All they talk about is the things that they, that are inherent to keep the system moving forward. And this thing with Trump is a part of that, right? Right before the convention, and you're going to see this play out. Trump walking out on stage with bandage on his ear and pumping his fist, and like he just came back as a war hero, right? That's how the Trumpers are thinking about him, and it's stupid. And it gives people sympathy for him, makes him the victim, and people look at Trump in a different way. Oh, but he's not the right isn't the ones that are out there being violent. It's the left, all this silly stuff, right? There's a reason why they did this, and if they're picking Trump for president, then it's this is going to be a big part of that. All right, so let's get back to where I was before here. Okay, so that's all I want to say about this for now. It just looks fake, and then we're going to see how it plays out, and it's very predictable. The narrative that's going to come out of the Trump team, and then the reaction from the vigilant, Trump supporters, and, the violence and increased, whatever it is that's going to come of this, right? The victim consciousness, all the things I said. I started making this video yesterday, and I was covering the stupidity behind the 2025 stuff. And then I want to record something now, a video from Fox, where they're talking about how Biden's, they're freezing $90 million of his investor money. So I'll do that at the end of this thing. And then I'll have something to say at the end to wrap this thing up. But here was the original video that I made yesterday. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm going to get into the Biden stuff. The Dementiagate is just getting ridiculous, and the Democrats, they just pulled $90 million of fundraised money for him. He only has, but 260,000 or something. So $260 million of total, and the PAC just pulled 90 million. So I'll show you that clip in a second. But let's start here. So this is just stupidity, and it's Trump getting rolled again in the same issues that cost him the election last time. Whether you believe the election was rigged or not, without Trump doing this, they couldn't have rigged it, if you believe it's rigged. And it's his extremist connections. It really plays poorly for him. And this time it's also about a revenge tour. And so as Americans learn more about Project 2025, they become more opposed poll finds. And so this is from July 10th, so 3 days ago. And it's been talked about quite a bit more now. So a poll as of now is even worse. They showed a poll on the news, but I didn't grab it when I have a chance. So right now it's 49% are opposed, and that's 3 days ago. The numbers have gotten worse. And 31% say they support it. And so the people who support it are already going to vote for Donald Trump. So it's a complete lose. What Americans think about Project. Most Democrats dislike it, obviously, the ones that have heard about it. And this one, conservative group behind Project 2025 floats conspiracy idea that Biden could retain power by force because, the people behind this are obviously government shills or the stupidest people in the world. Building now for conservative victory through policy, personnel, and training. And so what they're trying to push out here is to have people audition for jobs in the Trump administration, even though they're not, according to Trump, affiliated with this administration. And this is the 180-day playbook and training. And they're doing this 3 months before the election, that Trump could easily lose, and this would be the reason he loses it. This is the number one strategy that Joe Biden and the Democrats are using. They want to change the conversation from Joe Biden being senile to Trump being extremist, revenge-oriented, unhinged Republican conspiracy theorist. Majority in the U.S., Project 25 is exactly what Trump represents. So I saw this last night. Biden was out in Michigan, and they were covering that. After what should have been considered a disastrous press conference, MSNBC is leaning towards keeping Biden. CNN is pushing back and trying to get rid of Biden. And MSNBC and CNN, their top story was 2025, Project 2025. And it's working. It's resonating. And it's, something that's working for Biden and will work for Kamala Harris because it represents one of Trump's weaknesses. And let me show you this clip first, and I'll talk about this in a voiceover.
2025. So they want to have extreme actions to go after whatever happens in the election. Trump has also figured out something that relates to the Taylor Swift comparison I just showed you, which is all these people searching 2025 could be bad for his campaign. And the headlines show him now claiming that he is distant from this. The Heritage Foundation, his own former aide, Stephen Miller, who served in his White House, he's saying, well, maybe this is not his thing. He just wishes them well. The group's president now responding to that development by saying that they are aligned with Donald Trump. Take a listen.
No hard feelings from any of us at Project 2025 about the statement, because we understand Trump is the standard bearer and he's making a political, tactical decision there.
How do you view the policies that they put out versus what Project 2025 is proposing?
Well, the overlap is tremendous. There are some quibbles and differences of opinion here and there, which not only is okay, but it's actually good. I mean, we're going to be able to sort those out once the presidential administration declares what their priorities are.
So what this section is about is stupidity and tragic flaws. And, I talk about some scarus, things that you bring in from a previous existence in which you could be an alcoholic, or you could be, an artist, or you could be, whatever you are as a person, that you brought in this capital, good or bad. And, people can't break free from this, these patterns of behavior, that come back from previous existences, past lives, whatever it is, right? That people can't break free from these tendencies that they have. And they just make these same mistakes over and over again. You see it in people's lives all the time. The same type of mistakes. You do your best to not make those mistakes, but you just can't help yourself, right? And, it's just, it's tragic, right? And so with Trump, it's stupidity and arrogance, and his, anybody who flatters him or he considers them on his side, he is, he'll end up blowing up his chances or losing something because of that, right? Because of not being able to cut ties with somebody who, of course, Trump throws everybody under the bus when they, violate his, whatever it is, his rules. But Trump, as long as you're praising him for the most part, then you're his guy, right? As long as you tell Trump how great he is and you're a supporter. And this happened before. And so after he lost the election, my wife talked to one of her friends, like old-time, like college friends, somebody who really liked Trump and, wanted him to win, voted for him, probably donated money or, with these things, right? She was a Republican who was into Trump. And she said that she was so pissed at him for not denouncing these extremist groups and some of these other things that he did, that she felt cost him the election. Like, she, of course, wasn't a truther or somebody who, would say that this is rigged. But you can only rig something if it's close. Trump made a number of bad decisions. The Operation Warp Speed, of course, for truthers, some of the things he did that hurt us all. Censorship, the big event in January, the way closing down the economy, all these things that hurt him. He got worked really bad. And we don't know whether he's in on it or not. Like, or let's just assume he's an organic candidate, which of course he is, and he's controlled, but this isn't all scripted, and Trump isn't in on it, and he's not, self-sabotaging purposefully, because this is what's supposed to happen. But Trump right now is in an incredible position. Now, if Biden withdraws, or when he withdraws, there might be some issues because, all their ads, all their attack pieces are going against Biden, and they could, also sort of rope Kamala into those pieces, but it's much easier to attack Biden, especially because one of the biggest reasons to attack him is his senility, his, Parkinson's, or, his mental breakdown. And so it's not as good for them when he withdraws, but there's going to be other issues with that person. But right now, there's a image here that my wife sent me. It's some kind of betting thing. Trump 63%, Biden 18%, Kamala Harris 10%. And the money that's being bet, right? There's a lot of money being bet on Biden at 18% chance of winning. But, not a lot of money being bet on Kamala. She's not even in the race. But right now, Trump is in a good position. Vegas has him at 63% chance of winning. That's what Vegas thinks, and Vegas is fairly accurate about their point spreads and things like this. Majority of Americans think that Biden is senile and can't do his job, and he's locked into running right now. And who knows if he's going to leave or what's going to happen? And so Trump just has to stand back and not F it up, not do something stupid. And the Project 2025 is ridiculously stupid. I talked about this before. Because it has zero benefit. There's nothing in Project 2025 that's going to bring Trump votes, because the people who are into Project 2025 are already voting for Trump. They don't need to be convinced. These are hardcore Republicans, right-wing truthers, QBs, people like this, right? They're already on board with Trump because they are fearful of Biden, and even if they don't like Trump, or they think he's partly a shill, he's still better than Biden for them. They're activated, they're into it, and they're a part of Team Trump. And even like I said, no matter what their position on Trump personally is, they are already going to vote for him. And so, why would you announce this thing unless you're an FBI shill or you're really, really, really stupid? Because what you don't want to do is activate the independents and people who are wavering on Biden because he's old or whatever it is. See, in life, people have their dreams about what their life is going to be like. And people have these fantasies about marriage, about jobs, career, about, all of it. Like people dream about things, when you're a kid and just get older. And then at some point you realize your life isn't going to be like that, right? You're not going to have your dream situation. You're going to have your dream spouse. You're not going to have your dream house. You're not going to have your dream job. I mean, some people get those things and they're miserable. They're really unhappy. Some people get wealth and fame. They get everything that they thought they wanted and more. And it's, they're miserable. They're like worse off. They're like, wow, this isn't, I asked for the wrong thing, right? But for the majority of people, you end up having to start being realistic about your prospects, right? And, you have your options in terms of, possible marital, situation, your spouse, possible jobs and careers, and, all the other things in your life, right? And you're limited to what your abilities are and your, like I said, your samskaras and who you are as a person, right? And so you have to start settling. You have your dream, people have their fantasies, and then they have their, what's reality based. And in a competitive situation like the Super Bowl or presidential election, people want to root for one side or the other. It's only interesting if you root, if you put money on it, even more, right? But people who aren't like, it isn't like your home team or your favorite team is going to the Super Bowl every year. So you end up picking maybe two teams between two teams you don't like, just so to make it interesting. You're rooting for one team, whatever it is, right? You're rooting against Tom Brady, something like that. You're rooting against Patrick Mahomes or Taylor Swift and the Chiefs and Kelsey and all these things because he, was pitching the vax thing. So you end up rooting against teams more often than not. You root against things when it's competitive and you're, engaged in it. You want to watch football, but you don't like either of the teams, right? The majority of Americans didn't want to see Trump, Biden too. It was well over 70%. But the Republicans and the Democrats didn't care about that poll because they know that you're going to have to pick between one of these two guys, right? All these people that say Biden is too old, or people say they hate Trump so much, right? And Trump's a disaster. When it comes election time, they have to pick. And if they're going to vote, some people feel like they have to vote, and I'm not one of them. But if you're going to vote, you have to pick between these two sucky candidates. Both of them are very unlikable, and both of them have major flaws, tragic flaws. And so, in a real election, if this was a real election, but even in a rigged situation, you have to make it close enough so you can rig it. You can't, rig it by 20%. Like if, Trump's winning by 20% and you try to, rig these things. And also after what happened last election, it'll probably be more scrutinized. Who's to say how much Biden and Trump are in on it? I don't think either of them are because they're both so clueless. and they're both so stupid, they're being handled and managed. And whatever choice is being made between Trump or Biden right now, whoever they want to go with, it looks like they want to go with Trump at this moment, but this could be just something they're going through, right? And so, when you're in a situation where you're constantly settling politically, because there's never, ever a good candidate. There's never anybody who's ever represented me as with my beliefs and, the quality of the person. They're always lying and they're always, deceptive, and they play these political games, and not somebody that I like or would ever want to have a conversation with or spend time with. And so, I don't vote because, I know the whole thing. It's handpicked crappy candidates, and you have to choose between the worst of two options, the better of two options, right? And so, that's politics. And so they know when it comes to voting, you're going to sit there and you're going to either be freaked out by Trump or you're going to be like Biden, freaked out by Biden, right? There's hardcore Democrats that hate Trump. Biden has some people who really like him, a small percentage. Trump has, a good 20% of the population that really love him and they're into him, but it's still not enough to get him elected. But then you have Republicans who maybe don't really like Trump, but they're, he's better than Biden. So they're, you're going into the voting booth, and this is what you're left with. And right now, what you're left with is Trump, because Biden is senile. But if you get freaked out by 2025 and other people who aren't going to vote at all, because they're not going to vote for Trump, but they don't want to vote for Biden. But if they find out that Project 2025 is going to hurt them, they're likely to go out and vote, right? People will vote in self-interest. And if they're freaked out by this thing, and no one wants to see Trump go on some revenge tour. Maybe a few of his really dumb, ardent followers. But people are worried about their own situations, and they don't want Trump going in and being vindictive and destroying everything Biden has done, regardless of its consequences, and just wrecking everything. Because, Republicans don't want that. They're not interested in that. That's why Trump isn't, endorsing Project 2025 publicly, and why he isn't, talking about a revenge tour, because they know that it's not going to bring in votes. But the problem is he's talked about revenge in these public speeches, and this 2025 thing is out there pushing for this agenda, and it doesn't help Trump at all. That's why the Democrats are running with it. That's all they're talking about now. They think it's such a winning situation for them. It's distracting from the Joe Biden debacle. And it's just stupid. It's really, really stupid. You don't put something out there. It's also celebrating before you've actually won the election. You'd have plenty of time after the election, before Trump's inaugurated, to talk about this plan, right? But I don't know why you're doing it publicly. What advantage is it? It's just going to trigger some of the, independents and some of the Republicans and all the Democrats, and it's going to, be a big win for Biden. So why are you talking about? Why are you doing this? Unless you're an FBI shill or you're really, really stupid. And Trump, to his discredit, should just bury this thing, right? He should call this guy names, say that you're hurting my chances of winning. Why are you pushing this thing? It's stupid to announce some radical agenda before some vote has been cast. It's just really stupid. It's ridiculous. It's why? Why are you doing this? The stupidity. I was watching some show, and I forget the name, whatever it's called. It's like an Australian show. And the characters keep on making these bad decisions. And what's going to happen to them. You're like, oh, you're going to show up and the bad guys are going to be there. They're going to kidnap them. And they just keep on. It's just so predictable. It's poor writing, just whatever it is. I stopped watching it because it sucked, right? It's hard for me to watch when people are just making these bad decisions when everybody's watching it, know what the outcome is going to be. And then make the same decision 3 or 4 times in a series, in a TV show. It's, bad enough in a movie that happens, once in a movie, but it keeps on happening, making the same mistakes over and over again. And Trump's making the same mistakes over and over again. And that's just, the Democrats have made a major mistake by nominating a senile man. And as we segue into that, as of right now, which is freaking crazy, it seems like, they've just got people to accept that this is how he is now and he's better than Trump. At least some of the people are accepting that. Some people feel duped and, the independents, But some of the hardcore Democrats are getting mad about this, right? And like there was just, I just had to turn on the news, and that guy Velshi was on. He read a comment from somebody, and someone's like, your bias is showing. Biden is such a, a comeback guy, such a, I mean, he's senile. He's got the Parkinson's. Like, he's just really bad. And that press conference was a disaster. Multiple major gaffes. And they're like, well, it's better than the debate. It's a little bit of improvement from the debate. I'm like, no, it's not improvement. He's the same guy, just different circumstance. He still walks the same. He still has the same, cognitive issues. The only difference is it's a less stressful, less, demanding situation. But he shows up, and people who are like halfway aware go, oh, this guy's gone. And he's been going for a while. And yet the American people might accept this. There's still a chance that he could win. And this Project 2025 is like, the gateway to that possibility. Like, all you have to do is not do something stupid like that. Like, don't announce some radical plan that the Democrats are going to grab hold of. And every clip that you put out there, every interview you put out there, they're going to show it on news, and, it's going to make the viral rounds, and celebrities are talking about 2025, Project 2025, and all these things. Why are you doing it? Like, it has no gain and all loss. Again, so it seems like Trump is getting worked by the FBI or whatever it is, and he doesn't want to piss off the people who are into this thing. And so he's not denouncing it properly. But he should come out there and say to all his followers, this is some FBI intelligence community frickin', whatever it is, or just say, this is completely not going to help us win. This is hurting me. Like, I've said that to people all the time, in the truth community. I say things about truthers, other, kind of truthers, QBs, and, flat earth stuff and all these things. And I talk about how it's hurting all of us, right? And it's selfish, and it's like it's already, people have made their decision. You should let it go. You've lost this issue. They use flat earthers and the QBs to demonize us all, right? And so, like, just don't do it. Like, don't engage in these things. Don't put out fake information that can later be disproved, right? There's enough information out there. Don't be deceptive, right? Like, people just suck. I uploaded a video last night, and it took forever to upload. It's a 3-hour video. The last video I put up was just called Dementiagate. Biden gets Clooney, Dementiagate, Parkinson-fueled gaffes, and presser freak Democrat elite out. And I come out this morning, and I get a notice that there's a copyrighted issue, and I'm sharing revenue if I make it public with some other person. So I look at it, and it's that clip where Biden talks about, it's the speech that he gave where he's talking about Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he's talking about, kids rubbing his legs in the pool. And some clown who has a nephew Joe Biden song out there, some redneck piece of crap, piece of shit, has claimed that he owns the copyright to that thing and wanted to share revenue with my 3-hour video for a 15-second clip that he doesn't own. And so I, could have disputed it, which would have taken 30 days. And, that guy's Chad, he'll be gone by then. There's people who do this stuff, right? It's just a piece of shit basically trying to steal money and suppress video content. Like, if he's an anti-Biden person and I'm putting out a video about Biden, real stuff, and he's trying to make money off of people using that clip that he doesn't own, right? Like, it's just, the world's full of pieces of shit, right? It's just, like, I mean, it's just so many people just suck so bad. And there's nothing worth saving here. I mean, there's great things for, great people or even good people. But the majority of people, I mean, they're just self-sabotaging, self-destructive, negative people, right? Going in the wrong direction, disconnected from their soul, don't know what they want, stealing energy and resources from other people. I mean, like vampires sucking energy off other people. And it's just, that's how it is. Anyways, let's get into Biden here. Okay, so before the thing happened with Trump, yesterday morning, I saw this video. And Peter Ducey, Biden will only leave in one condition. And, it was just part of that whole debacle of his press conference. But then this was the news that broke.
Breaking this hour, New York Times reporting donors have told the largest pro-Biden super PAC that roughly $90 million in pledges are now frozen if Biden remains at the top of the ticket. But this may only be the beginning.
So think about this. You have a reality TV show, a fake billionaire, like somebody who's a flim-flam man, and I mean all these things that he is, right? And he hobnobbed with the Clintons and Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, he had connections to liberal people, and he becomes sort of a right-wing hero. And then you have an aging, groping, sniffling, snoozling goof of a candidate who got busted for plagiarism and, was a joke as a vice president. And they run, and after, Trump wins, and Trump loses, and there's controversy. People think the election was rigged against him. The stuff with COVID, epic things are going on, right? In terms of what I call the show. And in all of that, there's the big event in January of 2020, the post-election stuff. I mean, a post-COVID election, all the controversy, all the stuff that went on, right? All of it. And Trump remains still the centerpiece of the news, not the guy that supposedly beat him. Trump is covered all the time and talked about. Court cases against him, civil suits, and he just remains as this, this looming figure. And then they run again, in the history of president, like a former president running against a current president, this hasn't happened. And just, these guys are horrible people, both of them. Neither one of them has any really leadership skills, any of these things, right? And then they, it comes out that they took this guy, this putz, this gaff magnet, this snoozler, groper, just this really deplorable guy in Biden. And he was senile. They ran him anyway. He had Parkinson's. He was mentally breaking down. In 2019, they ran him anyway. And they cover up for him in the campaign of 2020. And then as presidency, they hide him away. And then by the time he's ready to run for re-election against the guy who's now a convicted felon in Trump, he's breaking down completely. And they're trying to get rid of him. He won't go, right? And then, this is all happening with these wars going on in Israel, epic, sort of biblical type of wars in Israel, and the stuff with Russia and the Ukraine, and the economy imploding, the post COVID stuff, and the world's like spinning, and you got these two guys who are kind of basically the same guy in terms of their character and their flaws and things, and all this stuff is happening, right? And then Trump gets shot, right? So this is what's up. Trump gets shot. And then there was this other thing from Fox that popped up.
Thank God he is okay.
Thank God he's okay.
I'm very
God made the bullet just graze his ear.
Very upset for the supporters of him who were injured or even lost their lives. I do think that President Trump's instincts were absolutely incredible. He decided to show everybody that was there, not just, he knew in the moment that all eyes of the world are on him. And he showed the world strength.
That's strength. Pumping his fist like an uncoordinated drunken bum.
And it was like watching a warrior president.
Warriors, come out and play.
And this country, obviously we have a lot of divisions. Obviously we have a lot of problems.
Okay, come on, bro. So, this campaign was something I wasn't into. You guys have been aware of this, right? My channel was struggling too. Like all of a sudden my people are coming back to it, being notified because of my interaction with these bots, which I talk about at the beginning of these videos, right? And, I wasn't into covering this. I was just like, so many other people really wasn't up for Biden, Trump too. They're going to try to roll out something like COVID again, another one, what was going to happen. But it was just two guys who everyone kind of, wants at least one of them to disappear, maybe both. I wanted both of them to disappear. Not that there would be anybody better, but at least it'd be different, right? These two old guys just redoing this whole thing. And so I just wasn't into it. I wasn't watching the campaign events. Like, it was just, there's nothing great about it. But then the story of Biden's senility and his Parkinson's became a thing, and that was interesting. Really interesting. Something like that hadn't happened. And then he wouldn't withdraw, which was even better, and that was great. You know, and now this, right? Which seems to be this staged event. This is going to separate the real truthers from the fake ones. Because the real truthers will be very suspicious of this thing, and therefore suspicious of Trump. I mean, real, Trumpers who claim to be truthers. They'll be like, oh man, this guy, he's a part of it, right? Like, he's been exposed now as being, like this is some kind of, like he's involved. He's completely, shown himself. If you believe that this thing is, you don't believe in the official story, then Trump has to be a part of it, right? And if you buy into this thing that they're all against Trump, it's stupid. If this was a legitimate military operation type of thing carried out, with military trained snipers, Trump would be dead. And they could kill him in a myriad of different ways, not out in front of everybody. These assassinations that happen in front of everybody or attempted assassinations are, big news events where everyone's going to talk about it. They're there to, serve as whatever purpose it is. And so this is, Trump is in on it, right? And so it's going to separate the real truthers from the fake ones, and all these things, the QBs and if you're a Trumper, like, how could you be a Trumper at this point? Like, it's just, I don't understand how you could possibly be after Operation Warp Speed and all the things that have happened since then. But people need a hero. They need somebody to believe in. They need somebody that's going to save them from the apocalypse that's collapsing around us, a systemic collapse, right? And the immorality and the degradation of the human condition, the idiocracy, is at the center of this, and how unnatural people have become, how selfish and entitled, and each generation gets worse and more pathetic, and all these things. And Trump is not a warrior. Like, Trump is a blowhard, right? He's a big talker. He's all front and no back, right? He's he's not that guy. He's a puss, right? So him pumping his fist and all these things and making him look like, yeah, they try to get me, but they're not. I'm a fighter. It's silly. They love you. Like, they love to hate you. They love to love you, whatever it is, but they love you. The powers that be, Trump has gotten his time in the sun. He's been the, most talked about person on every level, not just in America, but globally, and for the past, 10 years or so. And so, it's all there, right? And so, it's just kind of interesting, but, at this point, it was kind of better when Biden was being outed as being, having dementia, right? And so put Dementiagate on hold. Trump just got his ear pierced. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Rovato, definitely pointing for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.